Have you ever been to Soul Taco or Saucy Porca in Hyde Park? Using Asian cuisines with Latin American cuisines, they reflect the marriage of Asian and Latinx cultures in local businesses across Chicago. After all, that is what makes Chicago so attractive, isn't it? But how about this? What if you live in a neighborhood with both great Asian food and great Mexican food, and affordable rent, and great transit to the Loop? Then Bridgeport must be on your radar.
就对特别是新移民是特别好的、特别方便的事情。
I feel like it's a really tight community. I feel like everybody supports local businesses.
Let's see how many people share these same ideas, or why they otherwise choose Bridgeport, a community area booming with its Asians, whites, Hispanics or Latinos, and other races, ethnicities, and cultures. It is spring 2025, and let's go! Shown here was the Bubbly Creek, a fork on the south branch of the Chicago River, which sets the west border of Bridgeport, one of the 77 community areas in Chicago. Originally marshy areas along the Chicago River inhabited by Native Americans, the Bubbly Creek area was linked to the Mississippi River by the construction of the Illinois and Michigan Canal in the 19th century, which led to the flourishing of Bridgeport as an industrial hub with convenient water transportation. Therefore, Bridgeport became predominantly white, with Irish, Lithuanian, and other ethnic groups, home to 5 mayors in Chicago history, while excluding African Americans. Today, Bridgeport sits just south of downtown, bordering Pilsen or Lower West Side to the north, Chinatown or Armour Square to the northeast, Canaryville or New City to the south, and McKinley Park to the west. Partly because of its close proximity to Pilsen and Chinatown, major hubs of Mexican and Asian immigrant settlement since early 20th century, Bridgeport has been enjoying a sizable Asian and Mexican community. According to Dr. Hu Pingling's 2012 book Chinese Chicago, Race, Transnational Migration and Community since 1870, Bridgeport started to see Chinese immigrants in the late 20th century as Chinatown expands due to construction of highways and housing shortages. This process mirrors the Mexichanization of Pilsen, when Mexicans were displaced from their earlier settlement in near West Side due to urban renewal projects in the 1960s, as Dr. Lilia Fernandez describes in her 2012 book Brown in the Windy City, Mexicans and Puerto Ricans in Post-War Chicago. Together, Asian and Latin American immigrants prompted racial transformation and integration in Bridgeport. But the distribution varies by different factors. Ling identifies Chinatown and Bridgeport, or what she calls South Chinatown, as mainly comprising low-skilled workers from Canton or Guangdong in Southeast China, who are different from Southeast Asians in North Chinatown and professionals in the suburbs. On the individual level, immigrants decide to move for different reasons, with social factors outweighing economic factors in communities with higher incidence of migration, according to a 2019 study by Assad and Garib. On the other hand, Chicago natives can develop neighborhood preferences by race, with whites favoring all-white neighborhoods, while African Americans favoring racially mixed neighborhoods, according to a 2009 study by Creason et al. So how does Bridgeport relate to these views today? Following the publication of the 2 books in 2012, the Asian presence in Bridgeport has only grown stronger. According to data from the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, between the 2008-12 American Community Survey and the 2018-22 American Community Survey, Bridgeport's total population grew by 3.8%, in which Asian non-Hispanic population grew from 33.2% to 40.0%, with a decline in Hispanic or Latino population from 28.6% to 20.8%. However, not sufficient academic research has been focused on the most recent demographic changes in Bridgeport, or the south and southwest sides of Chicago in general, especially the addition of Chinese immigrants into Bridgeport, while Latinos are exiting in the past decade or so. What are some of the reasons and mechanisms behind these shifts, and what do they tell us about where the neighborhood is going? Meanwhile, how are Asian and Mexican restaurants running as major attractions in the area? To get a microscopic sense of how people have come to build the neighborhood of Bridgeport recently, this documentary explores both the settlement of residents and the development of immigrant-run businesses and cultural venues, and the potential link between these two. On the one hand, I collected survey data from a Bridgeport Neighborhood Life survey, circulated around the neighborhood about people's choices and reasons to live in Bridgeport. On the other hand, I interviewed a Chinese restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, and an Asian museum in the area about their connections with the community. For the scope of this project, I focused on the recent influence of Asian and Mexican cultural spaces, especially restaurants and art institutions. The survey, taking a Google form format in English, was only available via QR code posters that I put up at 70 different locations across the Bridgeport neighborhood, primarily near bus stops, so as to ensure the respondents' relation to Bridgeport. The survey was open to all Chicago residents to solicit opinions about either living in or visiting Bridgeport, and incentivized respondents with a raffle. The survey started on Thursday, May 22nd, with the raffle ending on Tuesday, May 27, 2025, thus covering both weekdays and the Memorial Day long weekend. The questions asked about people's time spent in their current neighborhood, why they choose to live there, their frequency of visiting cultural spaces, and so on. Surprisingly, there had already been 40 responses by the end of the day on May 28th. Most respondents are from the United States, currently live in Bridgeport, and moved to Bridgeport in or after 2011. This limits our analysis on natives' choices to live in Bridgeport, but also verifies the recency of most newcomers of the neighborhood. There are fewer Asian respondents than proportional, but whites and Hispanics or Latinos make up substantial percentages. Do they move to Bridgeport because of the presence of diverse cultures? Well, that depends on the immigrant-run cultural spaces we're focusing on. Between May 18th and May 22nd, by dining in or attending their event, I interviewed Chinese restaurant Men's Noodle House at Halsted Street and 33rd Street, Mexican restaurant Antique Taco at 35th Street and Morgan Street, and the Heritage Museum of Asian Art opposite Antique Taco. They all opened within the past 10 years, and they are here for both personal and collective reasons.
我做餐馆呢，是因为我先生比较喜欢做餐馆，他那时候就是说，后来我们也开了一个指甲店，但是比较远，在 Bridgeport 呢，是因为这里离我们家孩子上课比较方便。第一，第二个呢，就是在这边那时候的中餐馆呢还是比较少，而且这条街也是一条蛮大的街，蛮有发展前途的街，所以选择在这里。
So the owners, Richard Ortiz and Ashley Ortiz, first opened up in Wicker Park 13 years ago. And they did decide to open Bridgeport because this is where Richard was born and raised. He was born and raised in Bridgeport. He always saw potential in this corner, and potential paid off.
Men's Noodle House serves Chongqing and Sichuan noodles, which are known for their spiciness. It represents the greater diversity of Chinese food on Halsted Street, compared to the traditional Chinatown area, a hub of Cantonese people and thus Cantonese food. Both restaurants find Bridgeport to be a community-friendly area compared to other locations.
这里主要是说是一个社区性的餐馆，就是说，过来的客人大多数都是，住在这普遍住在这里附近的，或者是说这里附近的学生。然后 Chinatown 呢，一般现在就是游客比较多，就是流动性比较大，而且它那里就是可能是竞争比较激烈，这里还好，比较佛系。
Waco Park, I feel there's way more foot traffic. Where in Bridgeport we don't have a lot of foot traffic. We're still an upcoming community. Customers, I feel we're more family oriented. In Bridgeport, we have bigger space. Waco Park does have a smaller space where you just go in, dine in, and leave. Where in contrary in Bridgeport, it's a lot of families that come with kids. They stay, hang out for a bit.
More excitingly, Antique Taco participates in the Bridgeport Third Friday Art Walk, a monthly open studio night organized by the Bridgeport Art Center with 30 art institutions, restaurants, and shops participating. Bridgeport Art Center at Racine Avenue and 35th Street features new exhibition openings and individual artists opening their studios to all visitors. At 35th Street and Morgan Street, we have both the Joe B. Art Center and the Heritage Museum of Asian Art. Founded in 2004 by the Zhou brothers from China, the Joe B. Art Center aims to nurture the creativity and growth of its nearly 50 resident artists, while providing groundbreaking exhibitions open to the public, according to their website. Meanwhile, the Heritage Museum of Asian Art is in Bridgeport temporarily, but aims to present traditional art from all Asian cultures to all, including non-Asian people.
The museum started in Chinatown, actually, and owned its own building. And during COVID, because they cannot do fundraising, so they forced to close their location in Chinatown and moved into this renting situation actually now in Bridgeport. But also, I think Bridgeport is a very interesting neighborhood, which really opened us up as well. I think Chinatown, if you through a tourist or ethnicity lens, people expect a museum in Chinatown focusing on Chinese stories. But I think in this neighborhood, it's able to really truly to tell our story, because we are not only a museum focusing on Chinese arts, but arts and artifacts from all Asia.
Ji Yang points to the diversity of culture represented at the museum and in the neighborhood. With such a diverse spectrum of food and arts to offer, how does Bridgeport appeal to local residents? Within the 36 survey respondents living in Bridgeport out of 40 total, I have used both a word cloud based on frequency and Phoenix AI based on theme to identify some of the most common factors in people's decisions to live here that respondents mentioned spontaneously without priming. These categories include affordability, safety, community, amenities, transit and accessibility, and location. Next, we focus on themes and keywords related to culture or community. Diversity and food are recognized as frequently used words, explicitly mentioned 4 times and 3 times, respectively. Community came up 6 times, usually referring to friendly people in the neighborhood. Manually sorting them into a culture category, including community, diversity, food, art, and so on, we find 12, or a third, of the respondents consciously thought about cultural factors in reasoning about living in Bridgeport, and even higher among those who were not born in Bridgeport but moved to Bridgeport. There are too few responses to look at correlations with race or ethnicity, but every race or ethnicity is represented in mentioning cultural factors, which ranks culture almost as prominent as family, location, or transit, and affordability. Therefore, we can say that Bridgeporters, especially recent settlers, view third spaces or the community at large an important share of their life besides home and work. Then, in what way do cultural spaces serve to enhance such diversity and integration among people of different cultural origins?
拉美裔其实在我们店来进餐的其实蛮多的，因为他们比较能吃辣，普遍能吃辣，但是蛮符合我们，就是我们店的口味蛮符合他们的口味的，就是有时候也想换换口味嘛，就是也不要老是吃 taco 啊这些东西了。
We like to do a lot of fun events for both kids, adults. We have for instance, we have in the summer, once a month, we have food truck night where we have food trucks in our parking lot. Our parking lot right there, we usually have 5 food trucks that just stay there, and everybody gets their own food. There's kids here because we have dessert vendors.
Similarly, art institutions like the Heritage Museum of Asian Art host special events besides Third Friday Art Walk to bring people of different ethnicities and cultures together.
Also, through the museum, we just recently had this Asian and Black artists collaboration through quilting, because quilting and other textile arts has been a really shared art practice in different communities. And through this form of works, and we want to really, the project called Stitching Stories. We want to stitching this community together through this active reaching out.
With so many community building spaces and initiatives being launched around Bridgeport in recent years, how are they received among recent settlers? Within 36 Bridgeport residents, we see that 5 will go to Mexican restaurants at least once a week, and 9 for Chinese restaurants, level with other restaurants than Chinese and Mexican. Another 1/3 go to Chinese or Mexican restaurants monthly. This means people visit Chinese or Mexican restaurants almost as frequently as other food places in Bridgeport. For art venues, most people visit the Bridgeport Art Center or Asian art institutions like Joby Art Center and the Heritage Museum of Asian Art less than once a month. However, out of the 12 who reason about culture, we have a slightly higher percentage who go to the Bridgeport Art Center regularly, as well as a higher share in Mexican restaurants. Again, there are too few responses to meaningfully compare the attendees' races or ethnicities, which can be a topic for further study in the future. Nevertheless, we see that every race or ethnicity has some level of engagement in such community building and cultural exchange opportunities without significant differences or disparities. Therefore, to a certain extent, Bridgeport residents validate their choice of neighborhood by continuing to take advantage of the amenities and resources emerging in the area, more with cultural cuisines than with art venues. The future looks promising as different people are confident of their choice to stay in Bridgeport and maintain their cultural ties.
I think Antique Taco will be bigger, busier. Bridgeport, when you ask someone like, hey, how's Bridgeport? Like, people just envision only white people, right? Because that's how it was years ago. But now it's changing where you see a lot of minorities around here, Asians, Mexicans, black people.
However, with such rapid changes in demographics, especially the inflow of Asian people, some risks are present.
The Heritage Museum of Asian Arts is part of the Chicago Cultural Alliance, which is an alliance or coalition type to trying to connecting many of these nonprofits together, which most of them are like museums of ethnicities. I also see that as a way of segregating, not saying like it is not important to commemorate or memorize and preserving your own culture, but I think this emphasis on identity culture, identity politics. The side effects of that is many people self-segregate.
More evidently, as the census data and survey data both show, Bridgeport has always had a low representation of Blacks or African Americans due to historical residential segregation, despite the growing presence of Asians and Hispanics or Latinos. In addition, Ji Yang also talked about recent gentrification in Bridgeport, the process of wealthier middle-class people displacing poorer residents in a neighborhood while commercializing the area. In a 2015 study, Huang finds that foreign-born residents and Asians in 2000 are positively associated with the likelihood of subsequent gentrification in Chicago neighborhoods. A few survey respondents were also concerned about gentrification trends in Bridgeport, as well as other issues like massive police presence, lingering racism, and crime. Therefore, future research can focus more on the economic impact of Asian and Mexican immigrants in Bridgeport, how they contribute to or complicate gentrification, and how they influence different people's decisions to move to Bridgeport, based on data of rental prices and residents' income levels. So far, we have identified cultural factors as a major contributor to why people live in Bridgeport, especially diversity, food, and to a less extent art, that are brought about by Asian and Mexican immigrants. It will be interesting to see how that differs among people of different economic backgrounds and how that may moderate the gentrification process. We may compare Bridgeport to other neighborhoods in Chicago that might be more homogeneous or gentrification prone, or with greater Black populations. Until then, Bridgeport serves as a model of fusing Asian and Mexican cultures into the community. Thank you so much for watching, and special thanks to Professor René Flores for the amazing course Immigrant Chicago, to Chicago Studies and Latinx Chicago Civilizations cohort for a great quarter, to Min's Noodle House, Antique Taco, and the Heritage Museum of Asian Art for your interviews, and to all survey respondents for making this possible. Thank you all.